day 158 of the year of streaming and learning to code. We are continuing on and ending both at the same time Codecademy. So we are continuing on with what is currently the last available lesson to us here at Codecademy. So just the other day ago was, well, yesterday was 157. Hey, little cat, what are you doing? Look at you. Okay. You can stay here for now because we're not coding just yet, and we don't need the keyboard, or you can nap on the desk, whatever you prefer. No knocking stuff off with your toes. So day 157, they added those two courses, Learn JavaScript Control Flow, which is covered in other areas, but they kind of pulled it out and turned it into its own beast. We just conquered that yesterday. Today we'll be tackling Learn Responsive Design, but prior to yesterday was day 156. And that was finishing up the last section, Learn the Watson API. So technically that should have been the last day, but because they added these two last courses, this is sort of like part 2, post, sort of like those little Easter eggs at the end of the Marvel movies after the credits, just some follow-up nonsense. So that's what this is. So it's not quite the official end date. That was 156, but we're going to tie day 157 and 158. Tack those on as well because they added these before we got to the end of the Learn the Watson course, and actually they added it quite a bit before we even got to that course altogether. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the final course here at Codecademy before we get to explore all the other fun resources out there on the interwebs and start doing our own side projects. We have Learn Responsive Design techniques like relative sizing units and media queries to create websites viewable on devices of all sizes. Estimated 3 hours. Now, that's what they said yesterday, 3 hours, but really it took like, 45 minutes to an hour. So there's only one section. Let's see. Here they've got, you know what? I wonder if that was another thing. Here's another prerequisite course. That's what we noticed yesterday. These two additional courses they added are the only courses that have this prerequisite section, and they must have added a new feature to Codecademy like a month ago, where these courses only appear if you've completed the previous course necessary. Now, this prerequisite course is the very first course they offer, so maybe that's why it also shows on the list down at the bottom of the website. Down, oh. Hello. Death. This guy, the Learn the Responsive Design. Because the other course, Learn JavaScript Control Flow, doesn't show up in any of these. Not too sure why that one shows up for us. Anywho, course outcomes. By the end of this course, you'll know how to use relative units and media queries to create websites that can be viewed across devices of all sizes. I would have worded that differently. Doesn't flow well. Viewed across devices of all viewable across. I don't know how I'd word it. It just doesn't feel right. Why learn responsive design? As a web developer, it's your responsibility to ensure that your websites remain legible and visually appealing across a variety of devices. Using responsive design techniques increases the accessibility of your website to a much larger audience of users. Syllabus? Aha. Okay, so there's 2 lessons. Maybe tonight won't be the final day. Maybe tomorrow will be the final day. Yesterday only had 1 lesson tied to it. They did have, I think, 4 sections. Maybe they had an article or 3 pro sections. and 1 free. This has 2 free ones. We'll see. Maybe they're on the smaller side, but we will give it a go. Sizing elements for responsive design. How many parts does this contain? Wow, 1 of 10. Maybe it's a quick 10? We'll find out. We will find out. And again, this is basically CSS stuff that we'll be going over. They cover CSS in 2 courses, the Learn CSS course or the CSS course, and then as well the Sass course, which I still think after completing essentially everything, after completing everything on the website, that was my favorite course. But who knows, maybe this new course they're offering might top it. So let's find out. Let's start from the top. Modern technology allows users to browse the internet via multiple devices, such as desktop monitors, mobile phones, tablets, and more. Devices of different screen sizes, however, pose a problem for web developers. How can we ensure that a website is readable and visually appealing across all devices, regardless of screen size? The answer: responsive design. Hold that thought. Don't mind me. Just a moment. Think amongst yourselves. Tiny crisis. All right. Tiny crisis dealt with. What are we looking for? So, the answer: responsive design. Responsive design refers to the ability of a website to realize and reorganize its content based on 1, the size of the content on the website, 2, the size of the screen the website is being viewed on. In this lesson, we'll size HTML content relative to the other content on a website. You'll probably notice the unit of pixels, or px, used in websites. Pixels are used to size content to exact dimensions. For example, if you want a div to be exactly 500 pixels wide and 100 pixels tall, then the unit of px can be used. Pixels, however, are fixed, hard-coded values. When a screen size changes, like switching from landscape to portrait view on a phone, elements sized with pixels can appear too small, overflow screen, or become completely illegible. With CSS, you can avoid hard-coded measurements and use relative measurements instead. Relative measurements offer an advantage over hard-coded measurements, as they allow for the proportions of a website to remain intact regardless of the screen size or layout. Little cat, you are getting sleepy and starting to roll around on the desk. Do not roll onto the keyboard. All watching you. Instructions. The website in the browser to the right, this guy, Benna's travel blog. In the website in the browser to the right, uses many relative measurements. Resize the page by increasing and decreasing the browser's width repeatedly. What do you notice about the content on the page? What do you notice about how the content on the page responds to changes in width? When you're done resizing the browser component, proceed to the next exercise. Okay, so here, gigantic, tiny, a nice thin column of all kinds of fun, and then we go full screen, and it's stacked. The photos get larger. How cool is that? I think they get larger. They do get larger. Look at this, and widescreen. So awesome. Okay, so let's make that small, and we will keep moving onwards to section 2. All right. Incorporating relative sizing starts by using death. Where are we going? Ta-da. The highlighting, death. My trackpad, you know, after 157, what are we on? Day 158? This thing, it gets... I don't know why. It's always struggled, it seems, over the years, but having to stream daily now, I've noticed it more so in the last 158 days of how much the bottom feet, like, stick. It clicks, but it doesn't recoil upwards. It just, like, stays clicked, which is why we always struggle with our stupid highlighting, but that's okay. We're going to focus on the task at hand. Incorporating relative sizing starts by using units other than pixels. One unit of measurement you can use in CSS to create relative size content is the M, written as EM in CSS. Historically, the M represented the width of a capital letter M in the typeface and size being used. What? Historically, the M represented the width of the capital letter M in the typeface and the size being used. Ah, that's no longer the case. Okay, good. So that's what it used to be gauged off of. Today, the M represents the size of the base font being used. For example, if the base font of a browser is 16 pixels, which is normally the default size of text in a browser, then a 1M is equal to 16 pixels. 2Ms would be equal to 32 pixels, and so on. Let's take a look at two examples that show how M can be used in CSS. Dot heading, font size 2Ms. In the example above, no base font has been specified, therefore the font size of the heading element will be set relative to the default font size of the browser. Assuming the default font size is 16 pixels, then the font size of the heading element will be 32 pixels. Splash section, font size 18 pixels, splash section H1 font size 1.5 Ms. The example above shows how to use Ms without relying on the default font size of the browser. Instead of a base font size of 18 pixels, it's defined for all text within the splash section element. The second CSS rule will set the font size of all H1 elements inside of splash section relative to the base font of splash section 18 pixels. The resulting size of the H1 element will be 27 pixels. All right. So, from there, we've got our 4 instructions. 1 in style.css. Oh, and we're already in style.css. I'm used to seeing the CSS tab on the second tab on the right. But they've got it here in the first slot, so that's cool. Set the font size in banner 1, right, banner H1, down here. Banner H1, Banna's travel blog to 1.5 Ms. They've got an open line here. We will do font size, colon, 1.5 Ms, semicolon. Wow, look at that. Much smaller. Let's run. Larger. So we had to run it for it to take effect, and it did. It increased. Okay, so set the font size in .post2 Saturday Market to 1.75 Ms. We're going to take this guy from banner H1. .post H2 75, and we're running. Ta-da! And then 3, set the font size in post.h3 to 125, 1.25, and that's running as well. Beautiful. And lastly, 4, set the font size in the footer, copyright Banna's travel blog, to 0.75. Font size in the footer down here, 0.75. Right, and we're running. Look at that, 4 healthy green check marks, and the city is not on fire. Swimming start. So onwards to section 3. We've got little kitty, your head, boop, is right away. Okay, 3 of 10, nice. The second relative unit of measurement in CSS is the rem, coded as REM. Rem stands for root M. It acts similar to EM, but instead of checking parent element to size font, it checks the root element. The root element is the HTML tag. Most browsers set the font size of HTML to 16 pixels, so by default, REM measurements will be compared to that value. To set a different font size for the root element, you can add a CSS rule. HTML font size 20 pixels, H1 font size 2 rems. In the example above, the font size of the root element, HTML, is set to 20 pixels. All subsequent rem measurements will now be compared to that value, and the size of H1 elements in the example will now be 40 pixels. One advantage to using rems is that all elements are compared to the same font sizing value, making it easy to predict how large or small font will appear. If you're interested in sizing elements consistently across an entire website, the rem measurement is the best unit for that job. If you're interested in sizing elements in comparison to other elements nearby, then the M unit would be better suited for the job. Instructions 1 in style.css, add a new rule on line 3 that sets the font size of the root element to 16 pixels. All right, so let's go to line 3. We are going to take font size, 2 rems, D. On line 3, add a new rule that sets the font size of the root element to 16 pixels. The HTML stuff? I think that's what's going down. And this will be 16 pixels. Yeah, we're going to go... Although root element, I will just do one REM or one rem, but I think we needed to establish the HTML font size first. No, we got it. Green check mark. Okay, that was incredibly unsettling. 2, let's update the font sizes you set in the previous exercise to use REM instead of M. Okay, so let's update the font sizes you set in the previous exercise to use REM instead of REM. First, change the font size of banner H1 to 3.75 REMs. You got it. Banner H1 to you. And we're running you. Haha, green check mark. There we go. Look at that. Look at that. I did that. Set the font size in post H2 to 1.87 blah. Copy dot post 2. Raise your hand when you see dot post H2. There we go. And we're running. Okay, onwards. 4. Post dot 3. Copy. Yes. Dance for me, CSS. Dance. I control you. And lastly, 5. change the size of the footer 1.125 rems. So we will go down to the foot section, cram this right about here. That successful cramming, and we run. Good, good, good. Okay. Tons of fun. Onwards. Next, section 4. To size non-text HTML elements relative to their parent elements on the page, you can use percentages. Percentages are often used to size box model values, like width and height, padding, border, and margins. They can also be used to set positioning properties, top, bottom left, right. To start, let's set, dear God, we're going to start back here. To start, let's size the height and width of an element using percentages. Main, height 300 pixels, width 500 pixels. Main, subscription, height 50%, width 50%. In the example above, main and subsection, not subscription. Damn you, Twitch. Them and their subliminal subscription. Bias messaging. It's what you get for everyone having a sub button all over the place. Okay, so subsection, not subscribe, or subscriber, subscription. Each represents div. The subsection div is nested within the main div. Note that the dimensions, or dimensions, whatever you prefer, of the parent div .main have been set to a height of 300 pixels and a width of 500 pixels. When percentages are used, elements are sized relative to the dimensions of their parent element, also known as a container. Therefore, the dimensions of the subsection div will be 150 pixels tall and 250 pixels wide. Be careful, a child's element dimensions may be set erroneously if the dimensions of its parent's element aren't set first. Note, because the box model includes padding, borders, and margin settings, and elements width to 100% may cause content to overflow its parent container, while tempting 100% should only be used when content will not have padding, border, or margin. Cool. All right. Good times. Onwards to instruction 1. Hey, Eric the Red. How's your day going? Or night, evening? It's night for us. It's 9:06 here in California. Isn't front-end dev fun? It is fun because you get to see it. You actually get to do things. It's that immediate satisfaction. Backend is interesting, and we'll get there. But it's definitely easy to learn when you can actually see what the hell you're changing. So, good times. Speaking of changing things, instruction 1. Currently, the blog takes up the full width of the body. Let's modify this so that it doesn't extend to fill the full width. In style.css, set the width, #blog. Yeah, here we go. Width stuff to 86%. So they've got an empty space here on line 42. We're just going to set width there. Width 86%. Semicolon. Yeah. And we're running. It's doing its stuff. Oh god, it didn't like what I did. Was it... Hold on. Body width? Font width. There's no font width. Body width. We forgot something. Pretty sure it's supposed to be body hyphen. That's not a hyphen. There. Oh, well, okay. We also didn't spell width correctly, so maybe it's not body width. It was just that I'm terrible at typing. That's what we're looking at. I kind of want to get rid of body now. No, that works. Good. Body is our friend. So is width. Okay, 2. Great. Resize the browser's width again. Notice that the blog's text becomes illegible at smaller widths. To fix this, set the width #blog.post to 52%. Sure, this will ensure that the text fills only 52% of the container's blog width. Resize the browser now and notice that text remains legible. Okay, #blog.post here. And we're looking for, no, we get to edit ourselves, body width 52%. Look at that. 52. And we're running. Okay, green check mark. Step in the right direction, mostly. And now set the width in post.image container to 100%. This will make sure that the image's container will always be the full width of the blog post. So .post, we are looking for .post.image container right here, line 82 will be 100. Ta-da, triple digits. Good times. There we go, we're running. Green check mark. Tons of fun. Now, 4. Scroll to the bottom of the web page. Notice that there are 2 images. We'd like to display these images next to each other on the page with equal width. Set the width in images.image container to 50%. This will give each image and .images equal width. Don't worry if the images look distorted at the moment. You'll improve their appearance in the later exercise. All right. So we are going to do something about images.image container, line 93, width. Is it just width or body width? 50%. Let's find out. Let's scroll down before we hit run. So there's that. And run. I think we just needed width, not body width. Well, no, those are next to each other when we make it widescreen. I'm going to try just width because that would explain why it's not blue like everything else. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so anything that's white is a lie. We're referring to text or the font alone. So there's the photo. And now we get to the blog post. And that gets run. Why'd they give us the green check marks if body width isn't the correct thing to put? And blog. D. Cool. All of that is now fixed. Everyone's on the same page. We're all moving along. 4 happy green check marks. March on to page 5. Okay, so here, percentages can also be used to set the padding and margin of elements. When height and width are set using percentages, you learned that dimensions of children elements are calculated based on the dimensions of the parent element. When percentages are used to set padding and margin, however, they are calculated based on only the width of their parent element. For example, when a property like margin left is set using a percentage, say 50%, the element will be moved halfway to the right in the parent container, as opposed to the child element receiving a margin half of its parent's margin. Vertical padding and margin are also calculated based on the width of the parent y. Consider the following scenario. 1. A container div is defined, but its height is not set, meaning it's flat. 2. The container div has a child element added within. The child element does have a set height. This causes the height of its parent's container to stretch to that height. 3, the child element requires a change in its height modified, and its height is modified. This causes the parent container's height to also stretch to new height. Okay, so this is a vicious circle. This cycle occurs endlessly whenever the child element's height is changed. Bad times for everybody. In the scenario above, an unset height, the parent's results in a constantly changing height due to the child element. This is why vertical padding and margin are based on the width of the parent, not the height. Clever. Note, when using relative sizing, M's and REMs should be used to size text and dimensions on the page related to the text size, i.e. padding around text. This creates a consistent layout based on text size. Otherwise, percentages should be used. All right. Here we go. Onwards to the instructions for Section 5. Let's size the height of the banner relative to the root element's font size in style.css. Set the height in the banner to 46 rems. Note that the root element font size is 16, meaning that 46 rems will result in a height of 736 pixels. Dear God. So let's ask and they shall receive. We're going to do it. Hashtag banner rems. Font size? Height. Yeah, I want the height. Yeah. Let's do this. Let's put height here. Height. And colon. Oh God. Oh God. I typed something somewhere. And oh, because there's no semicolon. That's why that background repeat turned red. There. Problem solved. Height 46 rems. And we run that. Ta-da, look at that. Gigantic camels. Mega camel. All right, now 2, set the top margin, hashtag blog.post to 12%. Top margin, blog.post, top margin. Should there be some bluish formatted thing going on? Top margin, blog post. Is it just margin? God, I'm forgetting how to do. There's multiple. I haven't had to do CSS, and geez, I don't even know how many weeks, months, days it's been. I know you can have the 4. There's a couple ways to do it. You can have like I think it's top, left, right, bottom, or no, it's clockwise, top, right, bottom, left, I think. And if the top and bottom are the same, then you can just have 2 numbers, and if left and right are the same, you have top and bottom is 1 number. But is it just margin? I think it's just margin. We'll set it to 12.5%. 12.5%. Run. Yeah, that's not good. Top margin. I totally forget what's needed to do. And they don't have margin left. Oh, margin top. Margin top. It was hashtag blog.post, which is margin hyphen top. There we go. We're in. Ta-da! Green check marks. Set the bottom margin to 7.5%. Copy you. Oh god. Z. Bottom. bottom at 7%. There we go. Look at that. And running. And lastly, for at the bottom margin, oh, no, we did it wrong. It doesn't like us. Margin bottom, 7.5, not 7. That's why we were off by 0.5%. That's better. Okay, and now we're setting the bottom margin in images to 20%. Bottom margin in images. We should have taken this margin bottom to images and 20. Good, good, good. Okay, onwards, and we are running. Onwards. Oh, the halfway point. 6 of 10. We are getting there. Although relative measurements measurements provide consistent layout across devices of different screen sizes, elements on a website can lose their integrity when they become too small or large. You limit how wide an element becomes with the following properties. Minimum width ensures minimum width for an element. Max width ensures a maximum width for an element. Paragraph, minimum width, 300 pixels, max width, 600 pixels. In the example above, when a browser is resized, the width of a paragraph element will fall 100 pixels, nor will it exceed 600 pixels. When a browser is narrowed or widened, text can become either very compressed or very spread out, making it difficult to read. These two properties ensure that content is legible by limiting the minimum and maximum widths. Note that the unit of pixels is used to ensure hard limits on dimensions of the elements. Reminding, notes, good. Or pop-up stuff on my end. That's been dealt with. Instructions. Resize the browser to the right. Okay. Well, first let's see what they want us to look at. Resize the browser to the right. Notice that the text on the web page can become difficult to read. Let's limit the text width to keep it legible. The mouse was covering the L perfectly. On that, all we saw was this. Moving on. In style.css, create a rule that sets the minimum width of all paragraphs to 200 pixels and run your code. Now resize your browser, make it narrower, and notice that the text no longer compresses as much as it did before. So text, 200 pixels. Let's go wide. Yes, now that's fun. Those are actual paragraphs. This is some squished abomination of letters and awful formatting. So we get to resurrect the issue. D 200 something for a paragraph. Is it the blog posts? Or is it text? Create a rule that sets the minimum width of all paragraphs to 200 pixels. Minimum width. Do you think blog or blog posts? Let's try blog posts. 200. We'll see how that goes. Run. No. Close. Command Z. And what about blog? know what? It's probably post 3. I think it's post 3. Index. Paragraphs divs. Which div? Blog, post, opening line. Yeah, blog post. That's what you want to do. That was this right here. We can try here, but that doesn't seem right. Run. It does not like what we are suggesting at all. I'm not sure. I thought it was blog post. Let's just run for fun because we're confused. And where does it have get code? Where does it put that? 200. Command F 200. Minimum width? We did minimum width. So that minimum width. Min width. Oh, there literally was a... Did they add the P? Did they add the paragraph section? Or did I just not see it? We were down at blog post. I just totally didn't even see the paragraph section. That makes sense. I wanted to see. I was looking for a paragraph thing, but out of all the stuff they had all that noise. All right. Well, crisis averted there. Section 710. We're getting closer to the end, bit by bit. You can also limit the minimum and maximum height of an element. Minimum height ensures a minimum height for an element's box. Max height ensures a maximum height for an element's box. Paragraph minimum height 150 pixels, maximum height 300 pixels. In the example above, the height of all paragraphs will not shrink below 150 pixels and the height will not exceed 300 pixels. What will happen to the content of an element if the max height property is set too low for that element? It's possible that content will overflow outside of the element, resulting in content that is not legible. Again, resize your browser, stretch it out. Notice that the paragraph's text can become overly spread out, i.e. small height. Let's limit the height to keep the text legible. In style.css, set the minimum height of all paragraphs to 200 pixels. Resize your browser once more to notice the text no longer spreads out as much as it did before. So we got our stuff. Looking at our paragraphs. There we go. Things are stretching. Things are moving. Bits are all over the place. So now, paragraphs. Minimum height? Yeah, minimum height to 200. Copy. Minimum height. Minimum height. And we're running. Green check mark for section 7 onwards to section 8 of 10. Good progress. Many websites contain a variety of different media, like images and videos. When a website contains such media, it's important to make sure that it is scaled proportionally so that users can correctly view it. Container with 50% height 200 pixels, overflow hidden, container image, max width 100% height, auto display block. In the example above, container represents a container div. It's set to a width of 50%, half of the browser's width in this example, and a height of 200 pixels. Setting overflow to hidden ensures that any content with dimensions larger than that container will be hidden from view. The second CSS rule ensures that the image scales with the width of the container. The height property is set to auto, meaning an image's height will automatically scale proportionally with the width. Finally, the last line will display images as block level elements rather than inline block, their default state. This will prevent images from attempting to align with the other content on the page, like text, which can add unintended margin to the images. It's worth memorizing the entire example above. It represents a very common design pattern used to scale images and videos proportionally. Note, the example above scales the width of an image or video to the width of a container. If the image is larger than the container, the vertical position of the image will overflow and will not display. To swap this behavior, you can set max height to 100% and width to auto, essentially swapping the values. This will scale the height of the image with the height of the container instead, and the image is larger than the container. The horizontal position of the image will overflow and not display. Onwards. 1. Take a look at the images on the web page. Notice that they currently display incorrectly. Too large. Let's fix that. First, in style.css, set the overflow property in image.container to hidden. Run your code. Take a look at the images once more. At this point, the images partially display. In reality, what we've done is constrain them to the dimensions of their container, image.container. Any part of the image that overflows out of the container will be hidden from view. This will set us up to scale them proportionally. Something about something. Who's putting what where and scaling? Someone who's on first. Something about overflow. First. This says first, so we're going to look here. Style.css. Set the overflow property in blank to hidden. Overflow to hidden in image.container. Image.container. Here we go. And run. Resize the width of the browser back and forth. Notice that the images expand and contract to show more or less of the image. Instead, let's display the full image at all times. In style.css, set the maximum width in image container image to 100%. Maximum width. And we're running. Free. Great work. Take a look at the images on the web page again. They have been greatly improved. Oh, we forgot to. Oh. I love that. Yay, giant images. Woohoo. Everyone's excited. Good, good. There's camels and there's balance. Everyone's happy. Everyone loves a balanced camel, right? What could be more important? 3. Great work. Take a look at the image on the web page again. They have been greatly improved. Next, we want to make sure the image automatically remain in proportion when the browser is resized. In image.container image, set the height to auto. Height, auto, was it container or container image? Container image. We're running. Finally, within the same CSS rule, set the display to block. This will instruct the images to behave as block level elements and facilitate scaling as opposed to their default inline behavior. Display block. Beautiful. And we're running. And we're scaling. Yes, yes, yes. Good, good. Dance, camel, dance. Onwards. Section 9 of 10. We are so friggin' close to finishing this. Okay. Now, this is the last course. This isn't the last lesson. Tomorrow will actually be day 159. Will finally be the end of Codecademy, at least our initial journey with Codecademy. As they update courses, we'll come back over time. And in the coming weeks or month or so, they should actually be doing quite a large update to a good chunk of their courses. So we will be back in the future, but let's go ahead and finish up today. 9 of 10 from the top. Background images of HTML elements can also be scaled responsively using CSS properties. Body, background image URL, #, background repeat, no repeat, background position, center, background size, cover. In the example above, the first CSS declaration sets the background image, pound, or hashtag, is a placeholder for an image URL in this example. The second declaration instructs the CSS compiler to not repeat the image. By default, images will repeat. The third declaration centers the image within the element. The final declaration, however, is the focus of the example above. It's what scales the background image. The image will cover the entire background of the element, all while keeping the image in proportion. If the dimensions of the image exceed the dimension of the container, then only a portion of the image will display. In style.css, set the background size property in banner to cover. So in banner, there's a blank space here, background size to cover with a trusty semicolon, and we're running. Beautiful, look at that. Good times. As we head in position 10 of 10, we've made it to the end. There's no instructions on this page. We've got our achievement badge. We're just going to read through the concluding summary, go over the closing stats for today, and we will be done. Thank God. All right, from the top, great work. You've learned how to size elements on a website relative to other elements on the page. Let's review what you've learned. Contents of a website can be sized relative to other elements on the page using relative measurements. The unit of M sizes font relative to the font size of a parent element. The unit of rem sizes the font size relative to the font size of a root element. That root element is the HTML element. Percentages are commonly used in size box model features like width, height, borders, padding, or margin of, margin of an element. When percentages are used to size width and height, child elements will be sized relative to the dimensions of their parents. Remember that the parent dimensions must first be set. Percentages can be used to set padding and margin. Horizontal and vertical padding and margin are set relative to the width of parent element and the maximum width of the element. The maximum width of elements can be set using minimum width, max width. The minimum maximum height of an element can be set using min height and max height. When the height of an image or video is set, then its width can be set to auto so that the media scales proportionally. Reversing these two properties and values will also achieve the same result. A background image an HTML element will scale proportionally when its background size property is set to cover. Last but not least, relative units of measurement are a first step towards incorporating responsive design in a website. When combined with more advanced responsive techniques, you can create a seamless user experience regardless of a device's screen size. Take some time to experiment with your knowledge of relative measurements in style.css. When you're done, proceed to the next unit. All right, up next, we have media queries. This will be tomorrow, day 159. Learn how to write media queries that will alter a website's appearance based on the screen it's viewed on. We will take a peek at tomorrow's lesson and close out of all of this fun. When someone views a website, it's possible they are viewing it on a phone, tablet, computer, even a TV monitor, because screen sizes can vary greatly across different devices. It's important for websites to resize and reorganize their content to best fit screens of all sizes. So that is just a taste of what's to come tomorrow. There are 8 sections for tomorrow's final lesson of the final course here at Codecademy, at least that we have to tackle. We are backing out. So closing stats for today as we conclude day 158. Right? Yes, days 158. And we are finishing up Learn Responsive Design at 50% of the way through with 1,830 points to our name and 268 badges. Good times. Thank you to anyone and everyone who stopped by. Eric the Red, thank you for stopping by. To anyone who accidentally stumbled in here to view the stream, thank you as well for stopping by. And all views are greatly appreciated. Let's go ahead and back out of Codecademy, dive in, and we will stop the stream. The adventure continues tomorrow with day 159, the final nail in the Codecademy coffin, at least for now. But for now, stop on the stream. Are you sure you want to stop stream? Hell yeah. Kill it.